Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Friday, December 6th. It is week 14 in the NFL season, and the New York Jets get ready to travel down to Miami to face the Miami Dolphins here, a 5-7 Dolphins team hosting a 3-9 Jets team. Today, to break down all angles of this one from a Miami Dolphins perspective, is DouglieDoWrong. Thanks so much for coming on, man. How's it going?
It's going good. I appreciate you having me on, talking about two teams that are struggling in this division.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a bumpy season for sure for both these teams. You're spot on there. Obviously, a Dolphins team that's Bills obviously already got the division locked up and stuff,
Yeah.
but a Dolphins team that's had some quarterback injuries, it's had some struggles of their own, and we know what the Jets are. They currently are searching for a general manager and a head coach, and find themselves in the midst of their 14th straight season without a playoff appearance. So I guess we could just start there. It's a good landing point for us to begin this show today. Just what are your thoughts on the Dolphins this season? You know, 4 different quarterbacks have seen, in-game action, sitting at 5-7, and also just your outside perspective as well from, the division rival Jets and what you've seen from them and what has been a disastrous 2024 campaign.
Yeah, with Tua not sliding in that game against Buffalo, I think
Yeah.
it really hurt the team.
Yeah.
I think they would have beat Seattle, Indy, and Tennessee. You just saw how the offense has been playing since he came back. And if you go back and watch those games, we held Seattle to no scores for 2.5 quarters. Tennessee, they were able really much to do much until the end of the game. And then same thing with the Colts. It was a close game. So I think if we had a competent quarterback in there like Tua Tagovailoa, we would have won those games and possibly sitting at 8-4 right now instead of in the predicament we're in now where we have to win every single game for the rest of the year. But the defense also has been up and down. And I'm not a real fan of the way this team was constructed, especially when it comes to the trenches. I'm a big trenches guy. I believe in, you really want to build from the inside out. So, you look at a team like the Detroit Lions, who 3 years ago at this point, Dan Campbell won his first ever game. And now you're looking at them and they're 12-1 on an 11-game winning streak. They know how to build a team. They go out and get Penei Sewell and all that stuff. So they did it right. Whereas I'm looking at my team right now, like, you're not really building a team around your quarterback, because if you have a quarterback that's not mobile like Tua, why would you not try to put Fort Knox in front of him? And I look at the Jets. The Jets, they tried with Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to lie to you. When you guys grabbed Aaron Rodgers at first, I was like, all right, we're going to have to compete with them. It was very reminiscent of when you guys got Brett Favre. Kind of same situation there. But you guys are I don't know what it is. You guys were like, for a big portion of the season, you were healthy, and then you got Devontae Adams. I think that was your biggest problem there, was you guys went out and got Devontae Adams when receiver wasn't really your problem. It kind of seemed like getting Devontae Adams was more of a Rodgers thing, because, the receiver wasn't your problem. You had Garrett Wilson, and, you had Mike Williams, and you had these receivers that are good. It seemed like more of your problem was the offensive line, and you guys go out and get Devontae Adams, and it didn't really fix much. But also, I think with the Jets, it's just bad luck, kind of with the Dolphins. We were in a situation where going into the season, everyone was talking about, oh, Buffalo's down and out. Now's the chance. It's going to be a big battle between the Dolphins, Jets, and the Bills to take that division. That's not what happened. Buffalo has a very easy schedule. I think they've faced like 2 competitive teams, lost to one of them, and it's just the Dolphins and the Jets, it's just bad luck on top of like kind of the way the teams are constructed.
Yeah, 100%. It feels like going into this year, it was kind of either the Jets or Dolphins division to lose, because it was clear the team that got worse in the offseason was Buffalo, while Miami and the Jets got significantly better. And just to the whole luck point, too. I mean, I think the whole Rodgers timeline, the whole chance of Rodgers having success here was probably over 4 snaps into 2023, unfortunately, because he's clearly not the same player he once was, which is, unfortunately, Jets fans have lived that too with the whole Testaverde. It's just feels like time is a flat circle oftentimes with this team, where we find ourselves in another one of these seasons again. You mentioned Tua, obviously another really scary concussion. hopefully he could just continue to stay healthy and not have that ever pop up again. What have been your thoughts on what you've seen from him, though, since his return, overall on the season? 15 touchdowns, 4 picks has obviously kind of gotten this team back into at least a chance to compete down the stretch here, as opposed to, Boyle, Huntley, the other guys that have seen time, Skylar Thompson as well.
Yeah, Tua's a good quarterback. Now,
Yep.
I would rank him in quarterback rankings probably around like 12 to 10. I don't think he's top 10. I think, he still needs to get over that hump at the end of the year where he kind of falls off a little bit.
Yep.
Also, his injury history kind of, for me, brings him down a little bit. But I still think Tua is a good quarterback. I think he's better than a backup. And I think, he has attributes that are like his anticipation, his accuracy, all that stuff is stuff that will win you games. You look at guys like Peyton Manning, like Drew Brees, they didn't have rocket arms and they won you games. And that's kind of the category I put Tua. Now you look at today's NFL, you got quarterbacks that are running like Lamar Jackson, Daniels, Josh Allen, all these guys, Lamar.
Yep.
You got these running first quarterbacks. And when I look at Tua, he came back from his injury. He's thrown 1 interception. I think he's thrown like 13 touchdowns. He has over 111 passer rating, over 70% completion percentage, 1,200 to 1,300 yards. I don't know the exact number, but he's playing really good football after coming back from being put on IR, which he was kind of mad that he got put on IR. It was more of an NFL thing because, again, it was another situation where he took such a bad hit. He had the fencing pose. That they were like, you can't, because he could have played against the Tennessee Titans. I think he would have sat out against Seattle, and he could have, but it was bad. It was another instance where on national TV on Thursday Night Football, he takes a hit that puts him in a situation that he was in. So, it was, I feel like it was a little bit further up making those decisions. But he even came out and said that his injury and his decision making kind of put the team in the hole that they're in, and he's kind of not wrong. But on the other end of it, you look at the Bills game, you look at the Cardinals game, the defense also isn't helping the situation when Tua puts up 28 to 30 points and we can't win those games. So I like Tua's play since he came back, but I'm still iffy if the man can stay healthy. And thank God, everyone looks at his contract and says like, oh, why would you pay him so much? There's actually an out after next year where they could save a lot of money. So, it's like, me personally, I'm still drafting a quarterback because God forbid. And also you want a good backup because you don't know if he's going to stay healthy.
Yeah, I guess just kind of the last thing you said there. Do you feel his future is long-term with Miami? Do you feel it's more off of just the injury factor or more so performance? I mean, I guess what is your gut feeling on beyond just this year, 2025 onwards?
I think it's availability and also end of the year because, a lot of Dolphin fans are looking at it, and like we look at the Packers game, we look at the Cardinals game where he had the safety because of the bad snap and all that stuff, and they want Tua to be perfect, right? They want Tua to 100% completion percentage, don't miss any throws, and that's just not the NFL. You look at Lamar Jackson against, I think it was the Bengals, and he threw like 3 interceptions, no touchdowns, and they still won the game 28 to 18. Like, quarterbacks are going to have bad days. Quarterbacks are going to miss throws. It is a thing. Sometimes your team needs to help you. But this is his 5th year. So it's like, I think for me personally, it's the health. Because again, I'm not upset with his play. I know the type of quarterback he is, and I know how he plays, and I'm not against it. These rushing quarterbacks are fantastic and they're great to watch, but they don't have longevity once they start taking those hits. Unless you're built like Josh Allen, who's just he's a linebacker playing football. So for me, the biggest question mark is his health, and that's again where I'm still looking at quarterback. Like, even if it's not a first rounder, like a second rounder, if we can go out there, if the LSU quarterback is sitting there in the second round, take him or something like that, which I doubt. But I'm looking at not his replacement, but an insurance policy.
Yeah, definitely will be interesting to see how that develops. I want to get to some of the playmakers. Before we even get to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, obviously those two guys are the main talking points. I feel like we've got to get to Jonnu Smith. This has been a guy that over the last 3 weeks has been phenomenal. 301 yards, 3 touchdowns, 25 receptions over the last 3 games. when you look at his season ranks, he's top 5 in many of the major statistical categories among tight ends in the NFL. Just what has he provided? It feels like Tua and him have a connection. What has that connection been like? The Jets have a history here of struggling against tight ends, so it could be a matchup there that the Dolphins look to exploit. Just what has Jonnu Smith been able to bring to the table, and why has he been so successful here recently?
When the Dolphins brought him in, I thought it was a perfect addition. I think he was one of the first free agent signings that the Dolphins did, was bringing in Jonnu Smith, and I loved it because he has that yak ability. Whether because yak means two different things: yards after contact or yards after catch. There's criteria for both of them, but
Yep.
that's what he does. He's a guy who you're going to get him the ball on like a 4 or 5 yard in route, and he's going to get you another 10. And when they brought him in, I was like, that's perfect, because we have the speed and we have the availability, and you stretch the field with Waddle and Tyreek. All of a sudden, you leave the underneath open, you get the ball to Jonnu. He's going to break off some nice runs because it's hard to tackle him. And for the first couple of weeks of the season, they were struggling to get him incorporated. Now, I think a big portion of that had to do with Tua not playing for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But once they started getting incorporated, it's like Mike McDaniel was like, oh, yeah, I forgot I have him. And now he's starting to use him properly in end arounds and short passes and stuff. And, a quarterback's security blanket is always a tight end. And, if you're going to double, Waddle and Reek, and if you're not going to make sure they can't go deep and play cover 2 safeties and all that stuff, we got Jonnu to hit underneath, and he's going, if it's 3rd and 8, he's going to get us the first down, because that's just the type of player he is. So the addition was great, and I loved it from jump, because that's what they needed. They had these fast, speedy guys that are elusive, but not thumpers who will run through blocks or tackles, and that's what Jonnu is. He's that opposite of that.
Yeah, and the other two guys you mentioned to kind of the wideout talent, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. What have been your impressions on those two guys this season? Feels like Tyreek Hill statistically not like his most dominant elite season. Has that been more so just the quarterback play with Tua missing time? Waddle's still kind of along his normal path, but still a very dangerous duo. And for the Jets, most likely will be without Sauce Gardner on Sunday. So how do you feel they match up there? And of course, those two guys who, when they're on, are one of the best 1-2 punches in football.
I think Tyreek, it's more of a lot of teams are now just like, we got to take him away, because we focused on throwing him the ball so much last year. I also think that that's the other thing. I think the Dolphins are like, you necessarily don't have to have him be the first guy. Like, don't focus on Tyreek.
Yeah.
And you're seeing it. Tua's spreading the ball around. He's hitting Achane, who's having fantastic yards from line of scrimmage, not even just from running, from receiving. Waddle's getting in there. Jonnu's getting in there. We're seeing a lot from Malik Washington, our rookie, getting in there. And I think it's a lot of spreading the ball around. We knew it was coming. I think Tyreek, it probably bothers him a little bit that he's now not that number one target where we're looking at him all the time. But it also does hurt that our offensive line isn't playing great. So to allow plays develop for Tyreek to catch those long touchdowns like he did last year, we don't really have the time to let those develop. So it's more about these quick, screens or crossers or ins and stuff like that. So it's a little bit different of an animal. Like the Raiders game, we had 2 possessions in the first half, and both possessions were, the first possession was 8.5 minutes. The second one was 7.5 minutes. Both ended up in a touchdown. At that, our offense kind of evolved from being that quick punch, long touchdowns to churn and burn, which I'm not against.
Yeah, and you mentioned Devon Achane as another, piece. Obviously, in year number 2, huge year last season. Jets are a run defense that has struggled this season. It's had some success the last 2 weeks against Walker and Jonathan Taylor. They've kind of gone, seems like, a little bit back on track since the Arizona debacle where James Conner and Kyler went off. Just what have you seen him in year 2? You mentioned from a receiving perspective, definitely much stronger numbers there. Feels like he's taking a leap. Just the jump overall. Do you feel as well from a rushing perspective there for Achane?
Yeah, I really like the way I see him run when I look at the film. He's elusive. He's very elusive. You see him as a small back and you think, oh, I'm going to take him out. He makes spins. He gets out of tackles very easily, and he's very easy at finding the gaps. our biggest struggle now is the blocking. We,
Yeah.
especially last week against Green Bay, facing a pretty good defensive line, we had Kendall Lamb getting blown off the line of scrimmage, Liam Eichenberg getting blown off the line of scrimmage. That was our biggest problem, is blocking.
Yep.
Because when the ball gets snapped, our offensive line is 2 yards into the backfield, which you want it to
Mhm.
be the opposite way.
Yep.
So when he gets the opportunity, when he's in the open field, he's incredibly dangerous. But it's just finding those lanes right now is kind of hard to do.
Once again, we're talking to Dolphins analyst DouglieDoWrong. I want to move on here to the defensive side of the football. You mentioned here at the top of the show, kind of been an up and down season. So just what have been your overall thoughts on them, position group wise? What has been good, bad, inconsistent? Just where have they been so far this season?
So safety wise, I think that is our weakest position on the defense right now. Jordan Poyer isn't the guy who he's been. Obviously,
Yeah.
he's up there in age. Javon Holland's has been banged up, but again, not playing as well as we would think. Then you look at our corners; they're all kind of banged up. Kendall Fuller's coming off his second concussion in 3 months. So he'll be back for the game. Jalen Ramsey's playing like Jalen Ramsey. He's playing fantastic. Our defensive line is not the same without Christian Wilkins, but bringing in Calais Campbell, you would think a guy with his age, I think he's like 39, would not be as productive and as disruptive as he is. The man is just ridiculous at his age, consistently getting in the backfield, making tackles. Chop Robinson is finally, after weeks and weeks of working with Bradley Chubb and working with Calais Campbell and Teron Armstead to better his craft, we're starting to see it now. We're starting to see him use his technique and get off the blocks and stuff like that, especially against inferior offensive line, like against the Packers, who have one of the top offensive lines. He kind of struggled. But again, he's a rookie, so I expect that. But going up against like the Raiders and the Patriots, he was feasting off of them. So I'm excited to see that. And Sealer is doing great things. Our linebackers are okay. Terrell Dotson, who we brought in a few weeks ago, is not bad, and I like the way Brooks is playing. But overall, it's just very inconsistent, and I think it's because of the lack of pressure up front with the lack of depth up front. Because you have a game where on Monday Night Football we did not allow the Rams to score a touchdown, and they had fully healthy team with Puka out there with Cooper Kupp, and we didn't allow him to score a touchdown. But then you have like the Raiders, who Bowers was just doing whatever he wanted to all over us. And, there's other games like the Bills and the Cardinals, they were scoring at will. That it's like, which defense are we going to see? So it's hard to predict. They're very middle of the pack, if you have to ask me. Their ranking says different. The ranking has like 9 or 12.
Mhm.
I would put them a little bit lower. I think they feasted off of playing bad teams.
Yeah, and you mentioned Calais Campbell. What do you feel has been like the key for him to kind of, even at this age, this point in his career, longevity wise, still be playing at a high level and a key piece of that defensive line up front?
He's a big part of like the post game speeches he makes, and he's a
Yeah.
very big leader in that locker room. But I think what helps him is having Sealer to his right, because when Wilkins was there, they called each other salt and pepper. And Wilkins is hurt. I don't think he's been playing for the Raiders. He's dealing with an injury. But even when he wasn't hurt, he wasn't as disruptive as he was with the Dolphins. And I think it has a lot to do with having Sealer next to him, who's a very disruptive guy. And I think that is what's helping Calais, because these offensive linemen need to decide, who are we going to focus on, Sealer or Campbell? And you focus on one, the other one's going to get through. So I think that is kind of why he has this rejuvenation so late in his career. He's got a guy to his right or to his left, depending on how they're lined up, that is as disruptive as he is.
Yeah, so heading into Sunday, you mentioned, Jalen Ramsey's a big piece of that defense, of course, still playing at a high level, similar to Campbell. Ramsey's been around now for a little while and still making a lot of plays. Matchup there against Garrett. You've also got Devontae. Should be a lot of fun to watch. Just overall, offensively and defensively from Miami, are there any other under the radar guys that you would look for in this game, and any other, matchups to watch, whether it be corner, wide receiver, defensively, offensively, that you expect heading into this one?
For me, it's the run games for both teams.
Yeah.
I feel like whoever runs the ball the most or has most production out of it, I think that's the team that's probably going to take it. you want to keep the opposing offense off the field, especially at home. You want to keep the Dolphins offense off the field because they will, continue to do what they need to do because they're home. We saw
Yeah.
what happened in Green Bay, regardless if it's the cold or not. It's just not the same team. So for me, it's the run game, but also Malik Washington, our 6th-round pick. He's very dangerous in the return game. Now, he had a muff punt against the Packers. He should have just let the ball go because, again, you're kicking in that wind in Green Bay. The ball's going all over the place. You should have just let it land and don't even touch it. But every time he touches the ball, regardless if there's a defender in front of him, he gets like 15 extra yards. So I'm waiting for him to break one off. So he's the guy that I'm looking at the most, and especially, he had his first touchdown was an end around. So Malik Washington in the run games is kind of the things I'm focusing on.
And you mentioned Miami being much better at home than in the cold. The Jets have not had much success at all in Miami, so this feels like a game where they could bounce back. They haven't won since December 28th of 2014, Rex Ryan's last game. Does Rex maybe come back this offseason to coach this team? We'll see, but it's crazy to think that was the Geno Smith perfect passer rating game. We all thought going into 2015 that he would be the guy, he'd be the starter. He gets punched in the jaw. Fitzmagic comes in. We all know what happens after that for the Jets, but it'll be interesting to see if they can end that streak here on Sunday afternoon. Thanks so much for coming on. Where can everybody find you? Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff.
I appreciate it. I got a very peculiar name, so if you look up DouglieDoWrong, you'll find me, but mostly on YouTube, youtube.com/DouglieDoWrong.
Yep, definitely check them out. We'll have a lot of content heading into this one. We'll also have a lot of content here on the show heading into Sunday's matchup, so stay tuned. Appreciate you all so much for tuning in, and as always, JETS, 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 Jets.